Namaste. Welcome to the next talk in the series on Heart to Heart Volume 1. Let us begin with the next talk named Change, delivered at Montreal on August 16th, 1987 by Pujya Shri Chariji Maharaj. I wanted to discuss some of the things our speakers have said this morning and perhaps expand their thoughts. Jim gave a talk about change, a very good talk. So I would like to discuss this idea of change first. What I told Jim about not forcing change but waiting for change to come was something Babuji told me himself. Now here comes a problem. Because on one side we are always talking of change and on the other we are supposed to wait for change. So what precisely are we expected to do? Because everything we do in Sahaj Marg is to bring about change. So one night, shivering in the cold in Babuji's room, I discussed this problem with him. And what he said about change was fascinating. It was like watching a bird open into flower, level by level. Layer after layer of petals. The important thing to understand is that it is one integrated idea. And the idea that a beat of change is followed by another beat of change, followed by another beat of change, until finally when we come to a changeless state. It is necessary to understand this because we must know change as a process. Change is a process which involves events in time. Later on further discussion with Babuji, I discovered there are several levels of change. There is one level in which we can change nothing, for instance the universe. We cannot possibly change the length of the day and the night. We cannot change the orbit of the planets. That is, in nature we can change nothing. Now when I say we, of course it is excluding God, Master. Two people, you see. Perhaps I shall refer to that later. So when we attempt or put our efforts to change things in the external world, it is generally a futile exercise. So where we are dealing with our mundane existence or physical existence, what I said to Jim applies. Don't force change, wait for change. However sleepless we are, we wait for the morning. The morning will not come earlier than it will come. So in that sense, we have to wait for change to come. That applies to the physical world. We next come to the mental world or mental intellectual world. Here we find change is possible. That is what education consists of. A man can be born an utter fool or become a very, very wise man indeed. And it is possible, much change is possible in that sphere. So in that sphere, we are not supposed to wait for change, but we are supposed to bring about change. So we go to school, try to educate ourselves, ask the professors or the teachers to help us change. But if all that stops with just the acquisition of knowledge, it may be useful in our earning a nice living and having a high standard of existence, but it will not necessarily make us wise. Because the knowledge too must be applied on ourselves to bring about a more profound change in our depth of existence. Then when we come to the spiritual existence, we find that change is imperative and we have to work for that change. In spiritual life, we don't wait for change to come. We try to force change. That's what Babuji does. He makes it possible for us to achieve today a goal which would have achieved only at the end of eternity. So you see, we have this broad classification that change in the physical world is impossible. Change in the mental world is possible and we must work for it, though it may not be so vital to our existence. But change in the spiritual existence has to be worked for, must be worked for. And it is about that change we are always talking. Now, somebody may ask, how does change happen in the physical world when you say it isn't possible? There are two ways too. One is by the laws of nature operating in the physical world. You know things like gravitation, velocity of light, all these things. They operate inexorably. So you have the scientific laws, the laws of science. There is a second operation which is brought about by our sanskaras. That too is beyond our control in the ordinary human being who has not involved himself in the process of his own change. The samskaric pattern acts as some sort of program which brings about automatic change without our control. Therefore, we change jobs at certain times. So many changes in our life, you see. Most of them are disagreeable. Disagreeable because most of the time we don't want change. You see, we have this funny tendency in two directions in our minds. One seeking security, which means no change. What is security? Stability. I must be in same place. My wealth must not diminish. My wife should not fall sick. That is, we seek static situation. The another tendency in the mind wants change in the idea of progress. I must grow wiser. I must grow richer. I must become better accepted by the public. Things like that. Now Babuji said, if you are living in a changing situation and it is your sanskara which is controlling that change, you have no control over it. So you are really the slaves of the past. How to change it? Not by working upon the physical world itself, but by bringing a higher force to work on it. And what is that higher force? But the cleaning of the spiritual system. When the sanskaras are removed, their operation is stopped and we are liberated from our slavery to the past. So this brings to our understanding a very vital truth that change in one level can only be brought about from a superior level acting upon it. So we have to always seek assistance from a superior level, and as long as human beings try to change mundane level itself, their effect are doomed to failure. Therefore, when we come to the spiritual way and accept the spiritual master, we seek his assistance at the highest possible level of existence, not at any intermediate levels. Because the highest level alone can change everything that is below it, and there we have the master who is the master of the highest existence. That is why on several occasions I have said he is the master of change, because in him exists the capacity to change anything at any level of existence. It was not a joke when Babuji said he could make the universe spin like a top. It was neither a joke nor a boast. He was only stating what he could do. So he could not only operate at the physical level in changing things like the transmutation of metals perhaps. I have never seen it done, but it could be done by him. But he could operate on the whole universe as one unit. Now if you study human operation, we have the ability to change small things with the help of science and technology, which means that we use a mental level of operation to work on a physical level of existence to bring about certain changes. We don't have access to the higher levels. But if you study what miracles have been made, what miracles have happened under the aegis of science and technology, and you understand that this is only one superior level acting upon its lower level, how much more should we expect when we start working from the highest level upon the lower levels? Unfortunately, like a bee which gets intoxicated with the honey that it collects, the human beings get intoxicated with this little knowledge that he acquires. There is this little control over the physical world that he has acquired, and he dances the dance of intoxication, thinking that they can change atoms, discover what is going on in genetics, which is on a par with a child playing with a building blocks. To a real person with a capital P, this is all very childish, and it would be good if the Western intellectual society would see this childishness and stop playing with the fool with genetics and atoms, because in a sense they are dabbling with the things they have not yet understood. And what happens? Very much like a child builds a house with building blocks and destroys it, our Western technological, scientific, intellectual society is now running the risk of destroying what they are building themselves. Now, I am not suggesting we should give up science and technology. That would be stupid. What is the need of the moment? To rise one level higher and see from there what we are doing. The higher you rise, the more perspective you get. You look at the place from the ground level, you see something. You go to the first floor, you see a wider vista. When you are at the top, you see everything. And then, having gained the ability to change things in a very fundamental way in this physical world, it is necessary to go up to the next higher level and study the implications of what we are doing. Now, in a small way, this is what we are all doing. Something very nice is put before you to eat. You look at it from a higher level. Is it good? Should I eat it? Will it benefit me? Animals do this by licking and tasting, and often that process kills them. That process itself, the testing itself kills them, because it is like testing poison to see whether it will kill you. But who looks at it from a higher level and says, these are the components, this and this is the problem, this is going to kill me, he will never do it. Now, it is a rather enigmatic fact about experimentation that you cannot know without experimenting. I mean, it is a fundamental fact of any discovery that you can only discover what you have not known anything about. In that sense, all discoveries, all scientific discoveries are accidental too. Somebody could not have said, I am going to discover America, and then proceeded to discover it, or I am going to discover radium and proceeded to discover it, because that is obviously an antithesis in terms, you see. How can you discover something which you have already discovered? So you know, so many of these old scientific discoveries, radium by Madame Curie for instance, they were the results of accidents. Only thing, she had the creative ability in herself to convert an accident to her advantage and discover something in that phenomena which took place in the table drawer and which you and I would not have discovered. So what was the originality of in Madame Curie which we lack? An unfailing curiosity. How did it happen? She went further and further. It could not have happened, but there must be a reason. She discovered the reason. So scientific discovery is at the same time an accident and yet a purposeful inquiry. Perhaps we can generalize and say that is the intellectual function, you see. Now when we come to the spiritual level, the level is beyond the operation of accidents. The operation of accidentality is removed. What the master finds is not accidental. What he discovers is not accidental. What he creates is not accidental, because he is operating from the absolute level where no change is possible. It is the changeless condition, and therefore for him all change is manifest through all operations of time, past, present and future. So it is only at that level that there is nothing accidental, nothing unforeseen, nothing dangerous. Everything is planned and willed. Therefore, when we are able to submit to such a person working at such a level, the highest person at the highest level, who is also the changeless person at the changeless level, we are subjecting ourselves to him and to the accident-free changes that he will bring about in us. Now this is very important to understand, because many people start Sahaj Marg and something goes wrong, and the immediate reaction is to blame Sahaj Marg for it. A man starts meditation. After 2 weeks he has a heart attack. He says, meditation. You see, another man starts meditation. His wife leaves him after 3 weeks. Again it is meditation. But unfortunately, if a man becomes a millionaire 2 weeks after meditation, he thinks it is his ingenuity, his greatness, his business acumen. And if he finds a beautiful wife after 2 weeks, it is again his roving eyes which discovered her and his heart which won her. So we come to this unfortunate situation that when two things go wrong, the system is blamed. When something good happens, the master and system are forgotten. No credit. Under such a situation, how can you claim that you are a disciple or an abbot? Also, it is the higher aspect we must think of. If there are changes occurring in me after coming to my master, was it not precisely for those changes that I came to him? If I could have predicted what changes are going to happen, I don't need a master. We go to a doctor. He gives us medicine when we are sick. Maybe the fever increases, maybe the diarrhea is even worse. We telephone the doctor, he says, okay, forget about it. I know what medicine I have given you and what it should do. Wait patiently. But with the master, you don't do it. You see, immediately we turn to Tai Chi, our temples, or Christ, and we have missed the train. So you see, it is necessary that this invertendo be understood. That when we ourselves work on the physical world, we can predict to a very large extent that is going to happen. Modern science and technology assures it. When we work in the mental level, the predictability is less, and there lies its fascination. You know, for instance, speculative philosophy or even speculative science, the fascination is in finding out where my mind can take me to, which I yet don't know. So we are working in a field over which we have not so much control, in the sense that we don't know where it is leading us. In the highest level of spirituality, we can do without knowing anything. We have to do without knowing anything. The doing is ours, the knowing is his. And when we are able to accept this situation and tell the master, I am doing what you told me to do, the rest is your business, that is surrender. One way of thinking of surrender. So you see, this idea of change is a very far-reaching thing, and we should understand the laws of change at various levels of existence. And at one level, the laws of nature are inexorable, unchangeable. That is the highest level. Nature has no function at all. It is he who controls everything. In between, there is a spectrum of these possibilities. You see, something changeable, something not so changeable, and if we get involved in the intoxication of thinking, I have done this, therefore I am the master of this situation, I can do anything I choose. The first two are perhaps tenable, but the idea that I can do anything I choose is a destructive idea, because it is aggrandizement, egotism at its worst operation. So we should beware of mixing up these levels of existence, because many people arbitrarily apply these things. If change is possible there, why not here? So we should understand that in spirituality, we are dealing with all levels of existence from the lowest to the highest. Secondly, we must understand that from an inner intermediate level, we can control everything below it, but nothing above it. And that if you want total control, total predictability, total control and guidance, you have to go to the highest. Now, this is the fascination of spirituality, that to change even the physical, even the mental, we must go to the spiritual. This alone can explain a phenomena like my master. Physically nothing, but at the same time physically everything. You know, you have seen the opposites in him, always sick but always healthy, always poor but ever rich, no strength but all powerful. How could we explain this? Coming to the mental level, not much education but all wise. I have never seen him at a loss to answer a question, even technical ones, highly scientific ones. He was a master of the physical, because I have seen him curing persons that had incurable diseases for 25 years, 30 years, with just looking at them. He was a master of the mental and intellectual, because he could penetrate into matter, create matter, go beyond matter. Whereas all the highest scientists ever born, yet could only go into the matter a bit, like touching the skin of the orange, you see. And of course, he was the master of spiritual. That explained his total mastery. That was his fascination, you see. That in him all opposites came together. Physical weakness with indomitable strength, material poverty with total affluence, no education with total wisdom, and totally insignificant person at whom you would not look a second time. He was the highest personality ever born. Now, what happens to our ordinary life? We try to do away with one and keep the other. We want to look away sickness and retain health. We want to take away poverty and remain rich. Like that, you see, the law says these are two opposites which always exist together. Light and shade, health and sickness, foolishness and wisdom, vice and virtue. They are two sides of a coin. You cannot keep one and give away the other. It is a futile exercise. You go to the master and say, Babuji, I would like this but not this. He smiles most compassionately but gives no answer because he knows it is impossible even for him. But what can he do for you that he has done for himself? He can bring these wisely separated opposites closer and closer together until they are merged and balanced inside you. Now they are inside you, you see, not outside you to trouble you. So he has with him inside, like an atom has in itself, a nucleus and the electrons. He has within himself a nucleus of strength, with electrons perhaps of illness. And you know what keeps the electrons spinning around the nucleus? Difference in polarities. So when you embody within yourself by accepting this, that existence has two opposite sides to it, don't try to deal with them outside yourself. Like cleaning the garbage cans, keeping the toilet clean, putting on a good dress, it's no solution because now one is inside you and the other is outside you. But if you accept the fact that they are two things which must inexorably exist together for all time, and you tell them, come within me, and you compress them into one bit, there they are twisting around themselves, no longer troubling me, you see. My health and my sickness are whirling inside me, leaving me free of both. My total richness with a few electrons of poverty is whirling inside myself, leaving me free of both. So also with all opposite phenomena, and that is why he is called a master, because he has absorbed the opposites within himself, reconciled them within himself and made them inoperative. This is a condition which we should aspire for, not by negating sickness, negating stupidity, negating poverty, negating vice, but in a grand synthesis, accepting everything to go into you and allowing the master to balance them. And they become harmless atoms like you have here, you have here, you have everywhere, you see. They are playing their part and I exist. I don't know what's happening to the atoms inside me. Maybe electrons are changing orbits. What does it matter to me? It may be one atom of radium has become plutonium. What does it matter to me? Nothing matters to me anymore because I have contained them within myself. Even if somebody could explode an atom within me, it would have as little effect upon me as a supernova explosion has on the universe which contains it. So you see, troubles can be overcome, happiness can be accepted only when both are negated, both are accepted and both are interiorized and forgotten. That is another aspect of surrender. So this is what I wanted to discuss about change. I am sorry I have exceeded my time, which only proves that change does take time. Thank you for listening. Here we conclude this talk on change. In the next narration video, we will talk about the next subject.